When I came up with the idea for this video about a year ago, I had literally no idea what I was in for. I genuinely thought that what was going to happen was I was going to add this fan favorite oil additive to my car and my fuel efficiency would go up some small percentage, and then I could, joke around about how many new hentai DVDs I could afford with that savings. I was so confident that this would happen based on the enormous praise online that I wrote the entire script for this video and filmed most of it based on this happening and just thought, oh, I'll go back and prove it later. As you can probably tell by looking at my surroundings, that is absolutely not what happened. So far, I am out $228, and if I don't immediately drain this from everywhere that I installed it, I could potentially lose $1,200 more and total my car. If you leave with one thing, leave with this. Everyone is wrong, this product is bullshit, and this company is conning people. Now let me prove that to you. And I'm already backtracking. No, look, right now I have zero reason to think that I'm wrong, but of course the chance is there. If they can prove via a third party that their product actually does what they claim it does, meeting the standards that I've laid out below, then by all means, I will gladly delete this video and admit that I was wrong. I doubt they'll be able to, but I leave the option open. Motorkote is a product marketed as a synthetic lubricant for use in almost any fluid in your car that supposedly works by molecularly coating all of the metal in something that then reduces heat and friction quite a bit. Better even than KY. They didn't say that, I did. Now their Colombian site even claims that it increases your fuel economy by 10%, reduces wear by 50%, and will increase the lifespan of your engine by a factor of 2. And I have 3 buttholes. Oh, my bad, I thought we were just making things up. It came on my radar about a year ago when I stumbled across a rather infamous review of it by Project Farm, a guy who puts product claims to the test. First, he ran it through a Timken bearing test where essentially 2 pieces of metal rubbed together really, really hard with the fluid of your choice lubricating them. The goal is the least amount of damage, and it did really well, better than any of the other engine oils. And that's of course relevant because engines consist of huge weights placed on tiny surface areas and operate at room temperature and under no pressure. Then, and this is what really grabbed my attention, he added it to the engine oil of his lawnmower, ran it for a bit, and then drained all of the oil out to see if it really had coated all of the surface metals, filled it with water, ran the engine, and instead of promptly seppukuing itself like you would expect, it ran for an hour with no damage. And although I would never usually consider using a product like this, that was honestly impressive, and it impressed a lot of other people too. The Amazon reviews are fantastic, a huge portion of those people coming from this exact video. From what you would hear online, this is better than any engine oil out there, and everybody should be using it religiously. And so naturally, because I'm a dumbass, I decided to buy a whole gallon of it because I wanted to answer a question that basically nobody else had. If I add it to every single fluid that they say that you should, how much will my mileage go up? And by extension, will my BMW become a Prius? So I got to work. The plan was to drive a 23-mile loop of highway 4 times without Motorkote and 4 times with Motorkote, filling up between each trial to see how much gas we'd used. I'd use this speedway that's been cut off from the highway by this overpass so we could easily get the same pump each time, and each trial I would keep my speed the same at a constant 3 miles per hour over. If Motorkote really does work like they claim, then the average gas used on the last 4 runs should be about 10% lower than the first 4. Actually, no, they infer you should save 10% by just putting it in the engine. We're putting it everywhere they say it can go, so we should see fuel savings of like 20% or more. Now this methodology should work because pumps in the US are legally required to accurately dispense gas within 0.5%. Usually, from what I gather, they're more accurate than that though, because A, they don't want to be giving you extra gas for free, and B, a pump that's just 0.1% out of range carries a big fine. That said, as long as we use the same pump each time, it should be the same amount off each time, which would thus, negate any potential inaccuracy of the pump. Now you just watched the first baseline test. Here's the MPG figures. Let's go for trial 2.
When it comes to buying a home, they say
oh, fuck me, that doesn't make sense. And this is where the problems really began. So as it turns out, gas pumps shut off when they suck up gas through this hole in the bottom. From what I gathered, while you fill up, gas just splashes around and foams up, and so the pump can just stop at random times every single time. My first solution to this didn't last long. I thought, oh, I'll just use a gas can and weigh the before and after. Except that apparently overfilling your car can damage the fuel system, and I wasn't about to give my BMW another reason to brake. My next solution didn't work either. I thought, because every other week to film these videos, I'm driving from my apartment in Cincinnati to my mom's house around Columbus that has, a garage. Why don't I just record my mileage on that trip? My thought being that, it's a much larger distance, so a little bit of a difference of it shutting off shouldn't make that much of an impact. And so I did. I recorded 3 different trips before realizing that petrol god didn't want this one either. Trip 1, it started downpouring the entire way. Trip 2, I got stuck in bumper to bumper traffic. In trip 3, it was really hot out and I had to blast the AC. And variables like these can really wildly affect the mileage. So if I wanted any meaningful data, I was going to have to do like 100 of these runs, and that is just not feasible. So I basically thought this video was dead. Until 1 year later, about 2 weeks ago, I stumbled across an article by Car and Driver detailing a fill-up procedure for accurately measuring fuel economy. Apparently the trick is that once the pump shuts off, you wait 10 seconds and then fill it again at the slowest it'll go until it shuts off again. Repeat this 2 more times, and supposedly you're completely full and to the exact same level every time. And so I put myself to spare in daycare and got to action. We're back in business, boys. Trial 1, here we go. I'm hoping this works. What I did was I waited 10 seconds. I filled it the minimum amount 3 times, so hopefully that put it at about the perfect level, but it kept going up. Shit. Trip number 1, 0.39 gallons used, 58.7 miles per gallon. It's quite the interesting drive. As you can see, the Ohio is being quite Ohio right now. Trip number 2, 26.9. You definitely get some weird looks having a giant camera in your backseat, but you know, sometimes science demands that. 28.5.
Would lead to the most purely financial economic disaster in history.
34.6. I then headed home to add the Motorkote everywhere it needed to be. I used a plastic syringe and cut the recommended quantities in half for reasons that we'll get to. So 200 milliliters in the engine, 15 in the differentials and transmission, and none in the transfer case because the fill plug takes effort to get to, and I'm a lazy asshole. It being lifted, I took the opportunity to replace my Quasimodo looking jack pads that I could have done any time in the last year, and at the same time I noticed some new flaking paint and rust on the rear frame, so I excitedly scraped that off and then joyously recoated it all in CRC and fluid film. Fuck my life. By this point it was like 2 a.m, so I decided to hold off on doing the second set of runs until the next morning around 8. Motorkote's in, no immediate differences, maybe it's a little bit smoother, but let's just see how she rips. Trip number 1, 1.1 gallons used, 20.7 miles per gallon, 41.6 mpg, 22.3, 24.9. And fuck this. Our average gas used over the second set of runs with Motorkote increased by 33.15% and our mileage decreased by 24.9%. Inferring Motorkote didn't just increase the friction on my drivetrain, but drastically increase the friction on my drivetrain. Now I don't want to make the claim that Motorkote was all of this. There are other variables, so let's look at those other variables and what impacts they could have made. First up, temperature. It was about 13 degrees cooler on the second runs, which in theory increases the rolling resistance on the tires by a little bit, but also made the AC work less hard, so I'm going to call this one a wash. Wind speed. If we assume wind in the east-west direction cancels out because it's a round trip, the Motorkote trials had an average 6 miles per hour crosswind, where the first trials had an average of 13.3 miles per hour, meaning that the first trials were actually at a 7 mile per hour wind disadvantage. If we assume that crosswinds are identical to a headwind blowing against us in both directions, I don't think they are, I think they're less. The US Department of Energy says that driving 5 miles per hour slower, essentially 5 miles per hour lower wind, can improve fuel economy by 7%. So that would infer that Motorkote had a wind advantage of up to 10% and still managed to reduce fuel economy by 25%. The pump method could have had an issue. As you can see, there's still considerable variation in the gas used on each trial, though you would think that a low fill-up at the beginning would balance out by a high fill-up by the end, so I'm not convinced this explains it all. And finally, cleanliness of the car. Now I washed it a couple days before, and I'm sure that it was dirtier in the second 4 runs than the first 4, but I can't imagine by a hell of a lot. It certainly didn't look any different. I'll let you form your own conclusions on how much these could have affected the results, but one thing is for sure, it seems incredibly unlikely that Motorkote increased my fuel economy by 10%, like they claim, got helped 10% by the wind, and that a few extra specks of pollen then decreased it all by 45%. So at best, it seems like it did nothing, and at worst, it actually increased the friction on my drivetrain. Now, I calculated the net present value in Excel of the extra fuel costs that I'll now have to pay over the next 8 years in just my highway driving alone if I don't immediately get rid of this, and it adds up to over $1,200, and that's not even considering that if these results are correct, it's actively ruining my transmission, both differentials, and my engine, which would definitely total my car and probably before 8 years. Oh, but it gets worse. After I got these results, I did some digging. So Motorkote has no LinkedIn page in the US because I believe they're actually a Colombian company first. We'll get to that, but their parent venture capital owner, Into Great Brands, does, and it has 5 listed employees. For context, my local Papa John's has at least 3 times that, and Shell has 82,000. None of them have any experience in engineering, science, or chemistry. Their website is suspiciously devoid of any third-party evidence that their product does anything, or any evidence at all to back up their claims in the context of like an engine or a differential or any of the use cases that they actually tell you to use them for. Seriously, they don't have a single piece of evidence on their entire website in any of the use cases that they say you should use it in. Instead, their proof comes from testimonials and the single aforementioned ShamWow demonstration that curiously is once again not an engine. And if those were red flags, get ready to call each other comrades, because something seems off about a miracle lubricant that increases oil life by 50% and can be used literally anywhere. Doesn't matter the engine type, material, fluid type, whether it's a differential or a transmission or an engine or a transfer case, you know, having not been purchased by any number of these gigantic oil giants that could shoot the owner of this company so high into the 1% he blows up Elon's Tesla. Seriously, let that sink in. It doubles the lifespan of your engine, yet Castrol doesn't own it yet. Oh, and this team also runs Duralube and Slick 50, 2 other additive brands that have both been taken to court in the past by the FTC for lying about improving engine performance. That compared to motor oil alone, their products reduced engine wear, extended engine life, and helped prevent engine breakdown or reduce the risk of serious engine damage when oil pressure is lost. That's like the exact same thing that Motorkote is saying. These cases are old and this parent company probably didn't own them back then, but you can't deny this is a major red flag. As if that wasn't enough, when you dig into forums, you'll also find a nearly Nick Cage level conspiracy that Motorkote contains high amounts of chlorinated paraffins. These supposedly lubricate well, but can turn into hydrochloric acid in the presence of some combination of heat, pressure, and moisture. To be fair, nobody on the internet I could find had any definitive ingredients list or proof of damage from it, and the only proof that they have is a 2810 AMSOIL report that found Motorkote was 27% made of the stuff in 2010. Motorkote, however, claims it's completely safe. They also won't say what's in it, or deny that it contains chlorinated paraffins, or show testing that proves it's safe, but you know, just believe them. Or don't, because I was able to find that they have a Colombian website, and on it lies a partial list of ingredients. Now, I'm no Walter White, but the result of this translation is that it looks like what people are saying is in it might actually be in it. If anyone has better knowledge of this, please let us know. In fact, I think this originally was a Colombian company based on the fact that they have a South American LinkedIn page, but not a United States one. To be clear, none of the people on their South American one have STEM job titles either, but they did make this masterpiece of a commercial in 2009. It's worth noting here the claims I mentioned before are miraculously missing from their US site, probably because they're lies and they know that they would get sued for it, so instead they use vaguely testimonial language. I actually think there's a simple explanation for all of this, and it goes like this. Oils have additive packages of certain chemicals already included. If I had to guess, Into Great Brands doesn't design or manufacture their products, they're just repackaging existing chemicals that much larger companies have made and developed. Like perhaps something that Shell makes based on this job title. If we take NIS Industrial Solutions AC1000 commercially available additive, you can see that the marketing materials are pretty damn similar. This would also answer a lot of our other questions too, like how they only have 5 employees and why they haven't been acquired. Now this on its own isn't necessarily a bad thing. You know, it's quite common, and I don't call Kroger brand cereal a scam because General Mills makes it, but it would mean this. If it works as stated, it is almost assuredly already in your liter of Valvoline in the correct ratios. If you're buying a quality oil, you should stand to gain absolutely nothing from buying this product, or else they would have already put more of it in. And in fact, just like making your own do-it-yourself medications, it might be a really stupid idea to change your manufacturer's ratios by adding large quantities of one chemical that you don't understand, all because some outsourced demonstrator guy who will be working for Slapchop next week told you needed to. As for the really positive reviews, I can't say if other people had different results. I do think that reviews can be gamed, and I also think that most people, the vast majority, do not understand how finicky and hard to measure fuel efficiency actually is. I think that what happens is that someone puts this in their car, and then drives and happens to have the wind at their back or fill up at a pump that shuts off early, and then they go, oh my God, Motorkote improved my mileage by 3 miles per gallon. It really works. Also, it's possible that when you have old oil, adding essentially new oil would improve your mileage, but that doesn't mean that it's worth buying. It just means that maybe you should change your oil. I think it's pretty clear people are also drawing the wrong conclusions from this video. Project Farm proves it excels in these particular scenarios, but none of these scenarios are helping in a car engine, yet people are taking this to mean that all of the claims are true. So I'm now in a position where I think that anybody would be. The only way that I'm going to really feel comfortable driving my car again is to completely change out all of the fluids with brand new ones so that this product is nowhere near my car ever again. I've already bought those. In fact, I actually did that yesterday. I didn't film it though, but I did get the shot of opening the box. And thank God for FCP Euro, who will actually just essentially give me replacements for free. Seriously, big shout out to FCP Euro, but they shouldn't have had to, right? This product has wasted my money. It has wasted my time. What I want you to remember is that whether or not my tests were accurate doesn't really matter, because it's not our job to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's their job to prove the things that they say, right? And honestly, if they're not lying, that evidence should be really easy to show and only stand to benefit them tremendously. And I'm sure that they know that. Which means that in the absence of evidence, there probably is none. Stop buying it until they prove otherwise. Until then, I guess the good news is that I'm 1 gallon of lube closer to getting the 55-gallon oil drum I've always wanted. And, you know, as always, I'll see you next Friday.